Jeff, thanks for sitting down with me today. I appreciate it.
Nice to be here. Thank you very much.
Jeff, there's been a great deal of consolidation, changes, lots going on within the seed sector, globally, nationally, locally. We have to take some time to actually pay some attention to some of our past successes. And SeCan this year is celebrating 40 years in business.
That's right.
Congratulations, first of all. That's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
For an organization to have the reputation that it has after 40 years is a pretty stellar accomplishment. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys are going to celebrate this year?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. First of all, we had a great celebration in Clear Lake, Manitoba, and just a fantastic turnout. So it was great to see a lot of our long-term members and supporters there along with us. But we've also launched what we're referring to as SeCan's Growing Trust. And so that is just a little bit of a way of, I guess, celebrating some of our past success, but also looking towards the future and saying, what is it going to take to really drive this industry forward over the next 40 years? And one of the big things we're concerned about right now, of course, is this whole issue of public trust or social license. And just what do we need to do? What does the whole industry need to be doing to gain or reacquire maybe that social license? And so we've announced this Growing Trust program where we're looking at contributing $100,000 to Farm and Food Care over the course of the next year, and we're challenging our members to get in there, and we're going to match their donations. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Great announcement, and I think was incredibly well received last week.
Yeah, I hope so. I think so. Yeah, very much. Yeah.
As we look back, we got 40 years, 4 decades of experiences. Can you pluck out from that a couple of key decisions that maybe really had a big impact on the direction of SeCan?
Yeah, well, for sure, and it's ironic that it was 40 years ago when SeCan was formed, and it was really, I would say, one of the first really successful and a really great demonstration of what you want to call either a 3P or a 4P partnership, and that we had public sector institutions, public breeding institutions coming together with private sector seed companies, small independent companies, to create this really unique vision of the future, and that was called SeCan back in 1976. And I would say over the course of those 40 years, it's probably become even more relevant and is more relevant now than it was then. So I think in more recent years, one of the really significant things we did was to revise our objects to actually include the element of facilitating variety development. Initially SeCan was formed just for the sake of getting varieties out there, so it was really about distribution. More recently, we're really starting to focus on what can we do to make sure that all of our partners, both private and public sector, have the tools they need and have the infrastructure they need to get varieties into the marketplace as quickly and effectively as possible. So that was a pretty significant change in direction for SeCan, and something that I think has so far looks to be really returning some positive dividends for us. We also, I would say, a number of years ago, went about trying to start to brand the organization, to put some brand behind SeCan, and with the Genes That Fit Your Farm campaign, and I think that's resonated well with growers and with our membership, and so that was a little bit of a departure from years ago when we just promoted varieties, but we didn't promote the brand overall. And I think going forward, in order to be competitive, to be successful, we need to have that, not just well-known products, but a well-known brand to back those up.
Right, and obviously very successfully branding.
Well, we like to think so.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now I ask you to look into your crystal ball a little bit. What do we look forward to the next 10 years that'll take us up to 50 years?
Well, so again, I mentioned what we've done in terms of starting to build that infrastructure and that network to really bring new products into the market. And I guess one way to look at it would be, to say a lot of companies are vertically integrated, if you like, in that they do everything from, in some cases, trait development or germplasm development right through to the final sales to the farmer. In our case, we look to the future and we say, where are our strengths? What can SeCan really do to contribute, and what do our partners need? And so we see our role as being that one of helping to finish products, get them out there into the multi-location testing, shepherd them through the registration system, get that breeder seed multiplied in some places, in some cases contra-season multiplication, getting that blown up and getting it into the hands of the most very effective and very well experienced seed growers right across Canada. So we see that we can kind of play that role in kind of the center of the chain, and we can provide that role not just for one program or one set of genetics, but for many partners. So we see that as being a really critical role and something we can do very effectively going forward.
Right. Jeff, last year Canada adopted PBR 91. And I think that generated a lot of questions and a lot of opportunities for farmers in Canada. Can you talk a little bit about the role that SeCan has played in educating farmers for what this actually means for their operations?
We see the adoption of UPOV 91 and Bill C-18 as having been obviously a tremendous landmark and a real step forward for the industry. I think the challenge going forward is that we've had a lot of people speaking to how we need this new legislation and really kind of excited about bringing it forward, but then when the rubber hits the road, it's okay, now we've got it, what are we going to do with it? And so certainly there's some tangible benefits for the seed industry in the short term. Few changes that make it a little easier to acquire plant breeders' rights, and it gives a little more teeth to it. But ultimately, I think the big question, the big challenge for us is how do we deal with things like endpoint royalties? And I mean, I think the real challenge or the real opportunity there is to make sure that we can get money back into the hands of plant breeding to support innovation in the future. But at the same time, we need to be really cognizant that we're not undermining the rest of the seed value chain, because in fact, many of us, I guess, would argue that the majority of the value that the seed industry can bring forward is not just about plant breeding, but it's in all those other elements of traceability and quality assurance that is becoming so much more increasingly important in the food value chain as we go forward.
Right, exactly. Earlier this year, SeCan, in partnership with Saskweet, announced a $3.5 million investment in the University of Saskatchewan-Durham wheat breeding program. Cheers to that, just for the record. Can you talk a little bit about why the focus on Durham specifically?
Yep. Yeah, so Durham, I mean, is a great example, as are really most of the cereal crops of crops in Canada that are critically important, I mean, to our farmers, to grown on a huge acreage, and crops where there just, again, isn't a really well-defined value capture mechanism in place. Similar, in the U.S., if you want to use as contrast, corn and soybeans in the U.S., a company develops new corn and soybean products. They pretty much know they're going to get paid for that. Here in Canada, I mean, our dependence is largely still on cereal crops right across Canada. And, there's a few of those crop segments in cereals that are starting to generate and gather some private sector investment and interest. But there's others that are maybe not just quite as attractive. And we see durum as probably one of those crops where there's a lot of opportunity there. We have a huge opportunity to add value and innovate, but it's probably not one that's going to attract a whole lot of private sector investment. So we see it as a prime target for something like, the sort of a public-private partnership where we get together, we pool resources, and we can make some really great things happen, particularly in Durham, where Canada is the primary supplier internationally of high-quality Durham wheat.
Right. Jeff, when you look at the Canadian seed industry, what do you see that concerns you, and why is it a concern for you?
Well, I hate to sound like a broken record, but I think that's right now, obviously, it's this whole issue of public trust and social license. And I mean, we've seen how things can go off the rails with, for example, the neo-nic regulations in Ontario, for example. And that's a threat not only to, the technologies we have here and now. We look at the debate about GMOs, and I think a lot of us thought 15 years ago that we'd have been way past that discussion by now, and in fact we're not. So I think, as we look to the future, when we have all these new budding technologies, new breeding techniques, and there's tremendous opportunity there, but are we going to be able to bring those things efficiently and effectively to the market? So that's where, I think it's really critical for everyone in this industry right now to try and get out in front of that public trust, that social license issue, and try and be sure that we're all working together to be good stewards and do the right thing in terms of environmental sustainability, safe and affordable food, and really that's what we're doing, but we need to communicate that more effectively.
No, that's what I was just going to say, that it's no longer good enough to just do a great job of stewardship. We got to actually be able to talk about it. And I think in agriculture, we're not overly great up till now at doing exactly that. We have to be able to talk about our efforts and why we've been successful. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of talk about bringing different components of the seed industry together. There was talk about it last week at the Canadian Seed Growers Association. There was talk about it certainly this week here in gorgeous downtown Vancouver at the Canadian Seed Trade Association meeting. The Seed Synergy Project. Can you tell me from your standpoint, specifically yours, what's the need and what's the advantages or disadvantages you see in kind of bringing together those now 6 organizations?
Right. Yeah, and I mean, exactly. It's about opportunity, and I think a lot of people they kind of want to jump to the end game and say, okay, well, what exactly is this going to look like? And I think that's probably premature at this point, because I think obviously first we have to figure out what do we want the industry to look like, in terms of both the regulatory framework that we operate under and just the operating environment overall. So I think again, that's really the first challenge, is to figure out what do we want. How much do we want to rely on government in the future, or do we want to kind of be defining our own future? And then I would say it's going to be one of those cases of just sort of form follows function. In terms of, I guess I look at it in terms of what are the big rocks, what are the big things we have to fit into that bucket, and clearly advocacy, CSTA and CSGA have been doing a lot of great work for the industry. Can we put all those advocacy voices together from all of those organizations and be more effective, so that when we go to Ottawa, we're representing the entire seed industry and not just one part of it.
Right.
So I think that's a big part. I think there's obviously the regulatory oversight component, and then of course we have things like enforcement. Let's face it, when we're looking at changes like UPOV 91 and plant breeders' rights, we're going to have someone there that can enforce that, and so how does that all sort of live under one umbrella, and how do we make sure that we're not all running back and forth across the country to attend different meetings when we're probably far more effective to do it all together in one place at one time?
Do you think it's safe to say that the sessions that you've been in last week and this week, that there seems to be a lot more optimism optimism and open-mindedness to having these conversations than there ever has been before? Or am I way off base?
Yeah, I was I sat through some of the panel discussions at CSGA last week, and I really came away from there feeling like everybody was kind of on the same page, and that they were willing to kind of start with a clean slate, as it were, and just look at what is needed for the betterment of the industry overall, and that includes obviously right through to the farm gate. And I think that's what we really have to take a step back and say, why are we here, and what are we trying to accomplish? And that was really, I think, the message that came through loud and clear. So I would say I'm very encouraged that everybody so far seems to be on the same page.
Yeah, agreed.
So,
Jeff, SeCan works in all different kinds of geographies across Canada, all different crop types. What gets you excited? What are you working on now that gets you bouncing with excitement?
Yeah, well, I would say, I think anyone in the seed industry right now would agree that it's exciting times, because we're looking at a barrage of new opportunities through new breeding techniques, for example, and the way we've been able to sequence varieties like never in the past. So I think what's exciting is that as a result of that, there's not just going to be a couple or a small handful of entities that are able to bring forward exciting innovation. I think that as with all technology, the cost is coming down so rapidly that I think we're probably going to see a lot of new entrants into that market, developing traits, developing new genetics, bringing new products forward. And so, I think that for everyone, right from the seed grower through to the seed retailer, there's going to be tremendous and exciting opportunities there, opportunities to really differentiate yourself and add value for our customers. So I think, it's what's not to be excited about.
Indeed, absolutely. Congrats again on 40 years to SeCan, and thanks very much for sitting down with me, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thanks.